Okay, so now that we have our basic colors laid out, I want to start getting a little bit of variation in my color, and I'm going to use that. I'm going to do that using a specific node within Arnold. So what I'm going to do is go and select. We'll start with our shingles here. I'm going to select my shingle and make sure we're on the Shingle SS standard surface material. And where it says color here, I'm going to come up and I'm going to, the first thing I want to do actually is increase the roughness. Before it was pretty low. The shingles are made out of clay, so they're not going to be super reflective. So I do want to increase the roughness, probably somewhere around 0.8. I don't want them to be super reflective as they are. But what I want to do to get some varying color is I'm going to come to my color setting here. I'm going to click on this little checker box that will let me input a new node. And what I'm looking for here is an aiColorJitter. This is an Arnold node that's built into the Arnold renderer. So we're going to find it under Arnold and Utility. And you can see that I already put in a search there. So if you just type in aiColor, we'll see the aiColorJitter right there. So I'm going to input that node. Everything's going to turn white because this node will override our current color. But I'm going to go and just reapply our color there. And we're not going to see this in our viewport. We're not going to see the change in colors in our viewport. So what we need to do is render it to actually see the settings here change. So I'm going to do a render. I'll give it a second to kick in. It's already, I was doing some tests earlier, so it was already a little bit off. And then we can play around with our shader here, or our color jitter node. So the first thing we want to do is change our type to object. This is the whole reason we kept all of those shingles as separate objects, and our bricks and so on, because this is basically going to make every single one of these objects a slightly different color at random. So I don't want to change the hue min and max much, but I can change the saturation a tad, maybe saturation max just a little bit, 0.025. That's probably pretty good. Again, I just want some subtle variation here. And maybe we'll do just a tad of hue jitter as well. So we'll do 0.01, maybe 0.025 hue jitter. And now if it's starting to look a little too bright, so it's a little bit brighter than what we initially had it planned out as. So I can just come into my shader here and I'm just going to darken it a little bit. To sort of get us back to where we were before we applied that hue jitter. And again, we can drop this pretty low. So we can try something like 0.05 for that saturation. That actually looks pretty good there. Yeah, so I think this is looking pretty good. Now, when you do this, you will notice some issues here and there about with some of your objects sort of like poking through other ones. Like I have a shingle kind of poking through another shingle right there. You can just kind of do a quick look through all of them. And if you see anything that's just like a glaring issue that you want to fix, you can go ahead and fix that. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and fix this shingle right here. Probably just, actually, let's do this with it. Let's take this whole shingle off. And I'm going to move it down and rotate it around a little bit. to where it looks a little bit like a shingle just came loose and is sitting on the roof. See how that looks. Yeah, I don't know. I may or may not keep that. We'll see. For now, I'm just going to leave it right there. So the other thing that I want to try here is just selecting a few shingles at random and giving them a different material altogether. So I'm just going to go through and randomly pick a few of these other shingles. And just kind of randomly picking shingles here. And I'm going to assign a different material to those. So I'm going to go to assign new, assign favorite material, standard surface. We'll go ahead and do clay again. But I want to come in and turn my weight for subsurface all the way down, and I want to increase my roughness. And I just want to make these like a really desaturated orangish color. So kind of like just a bit of a complementing color to the blue. So maybe something along the lines of that. And this should just give a nice contrast, sort of sprinkled throughout the roof of different colors. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So yeah, I fairly like that. I think I may make this a little bit more orange and a little tad bit more saturated, just to kind of bump up the contrast a little bit. Yeah, I actually like that quite a bit. And now I could do the same with this. I could take an aiColorJitter and give those all sort of varying colors. I may do that eventually, but for now, I think this actually looks pretty good the way it is. So now let's give this treatment to the rest of our model, the bricks and the wood. So we will just turn off our render for now. Let's select the wood material. Same thing, I'm going to go and apply our aiColorJitter to that. I'm going to choose our wood material here. And again, we're going to need to look at this in our render view so we can see how it's changing. So with this one, I have a feeling I'm going to need to make this much darker. We need to remember to set this to object. So if you get a bit too crazy with the hue jitter, it will start to look like a clown house. So you need to be very, very careful with the hue jitter. And I think my color in general needs to be quite a bit, maybe more saturated and quite a bit darker. So we have more room to sort of play around with here. Definitely don't like how orange it is. So at times you may need to just like sort of start from 0 again to kind of get back to what you're looking for. And I would recommend just moving these in very small increments until you sort of get the look you're going for there. So I think it's that gain max that's really lightening it up a lot. So I want to be very careful with that gain max function or option. So let's try this at something like 0.05. Again, I don't want it to be too much like a clown house. And you may need to go in and adjust your overall color as you kind of go. So I think that's actually starting to look pretty good. And then as far as the overall material goes, again, we can probably increase the roughness a bit. We don't want it to be too shiny. This is supposed to be like old decayed wood. Now, if it was like nice shiny new wood polish, we'd want it to be a little bit more shiny. But I think everything we're going to be doing here, with the exception of the glass, is going to be pretty rough and not have a lot of shininess to it. And we could do the same thing here with the wood and add a few accent ones. I don't think so. I think I'm going to leave this kind of the way that it is. Now, I think I will change the material of the inside of the wood. So like the top portion of the house here. I think I'm going to change that to a different material. So we're going to go to assign standard surface. And I'm going to name this wood variant SS. I also want to rename our shingle here to shingle variant SS. And then for this wood variant, we'll do plastic again. Again, take our subsurface all the way down. Change our color to more of like, I think I want this one to be a little bit more of a dark brown. Almost more of a burgundy color. And then we'll just do a quick render to see what that looks like. So that looks good. So next we want to do this for our bricks. So same thing, I'm going to select our bricks here, and we're going to do a utility, aiColorJitter, same thing. We'll choose that very dark desaturated tone for our bricks. And we'll jump into our render view. To sort of witness the changes that we're making. Again, change type to object. These, I think we can play around with the hue a tad bit more, since they're basically rocks and they're all going to be slightly different colors. And the saturation a little bit more. You don't really want them to be green. We want them all to be kind of more on the warmer side. And I want them all to be quite a bit darker. So I'm just going to darken my overall brick. And now you will notice this is something that you'll probably be tweaking off and on as you go. Like I feel like the hue shift in my wood is a little too much. So I'm going to take this down to maybe like 0.02. So yeah, I think that looks a little bit nicer. I want to take the roughness of my interior part of this house all the way up. I'm going to do the same thing for the concrete material that I have here. I want to take that roughness all the way up so we have no shininess there. Now for the chimney, I'm thinking maybe I do a different color brick for the chimney altogether. Just because it's kind of blending into the house and I do want it to be a little bit different. And if we look at our reference here, we can see that the chimney is kind of the same color as the roof. It's kind of this bluish brick, while the house itself is more of a warm brick color. So so let's do that. Let's go ahead and grab my chimney. And we're just going to, let's turn off our renderer. We'll assign a new material to this. So assign standard surface. And once again, we'll do our clay preset and just take down our subsurface. And we'll use that sort of darkish bluish base. We'll increase the roughness quite a bit. And we'll add another hue jitter or color jitter node to our chimney. Change this to object. Let's actually rotate this around a little bit so we can see. I'm actually going to move my light over a little bit so we just see that chimney a little bit more in detail. And then, yeah, so we'll name this material Chimney Brick SS. And we'll use our color jitter. See, I think mainly I want to jitter the gain, maybe the saturation a tad, and maybe the hue just a little bit. Just going to desaturate that color overall a tad. All right, and then I'm actually going to come through and just start selecting a bunch of random bricks here, especially the ones closer to the house. This should make it look like it's going to blend into the house a little bit more. But just a bunch of random bricks here. And I'm going to assign our other brick material to these guys. So that's going to be our bricks. And we'll just take a look at what that looks like. So yeah, I think that looks great. I really like the other bricks being mixed into those gray bricks. I do want them to be less blue. I want them to be a little bit more desaturated. So I definitely want them to be a less blue and just more gray. So I think rather than playing with the saturation, we can play with the hue shift a little bit. And that way we just get some more gray looking bricks. All right, now for the windows, we will sort of like play with these a little bit more in depth, but I just wanted to show you something really neat here with the windows, something that we can do just to kind of get a vibe going a little bit with the overall look of our house. So what we can do is come down to our emission attribute and our window glass material. And we'll render this so you can kind of see this in action. But I can change my emission color here to something like a bright orange to kind of replicate our reference. So sort of like a bright orangish yellow, something like that. And then I'll increase the weight of our emission here. And we can bump this above 1. So we can say something like 10 or 20. Let's cut the difference and do 15. And then we get some light being emitted from our windows. Now this is one of those things, you'll see all these dots flying out here. These are what's known as fireflies. Now when you're doing a GPU render, this is pretty typical to see these. And again, this is why I'll do GPU to kind of test things out and play with color. But then when it comes time, anytime I'm going to do a final render, I always want to switch my renderer to CPU and do a CPU render instead. So just to show you the difference there. So we'll initially see some of those fireflies, but the CPU renderer will kind of go through and get rid of them. All right, so I think that's looking pretty good at this point. You can certainly add more to your house. You don't have to leave it at this point. You know, if you want to add accessories, you could add a lamppost and sort of like a light and other things. But I think for now, I'm fairly happy with how the house looks so far and the shading and everything. I think now we can start working on the environment. And sort of like the surrounding little island that this house is going to live on. We'll certainly do more things look-wise to, say, the windows and maybe even the bricks and the tiles and things like that to give them a little bit more color variation. But for now, I'm very happy with where this is. We can, let me go in here and just play with the lighting a little bit. I'm going to drop all of my lighting down a tad, so we can get more of a night look going here. So at this point, it's just a lot of fun to sort of play around with your settings and play with the colors, play with the lighting. It's sort of a much needed break from all the modeling we've been doing, all the tedious stuff like making each brick look different or making each piece of wood look different. It's a nice break from all the tedium to actually start getting some really cool results from what we've done so far.